I was sitting in my parents' living room when they told me I had two choices: become my sister's unpaid nanny, or they'd raise my rent by hundreds of dollars. No yelling. No drama. Just my mom reading from a printed schedule like she was presenting a business proposal, while my dad stood by the fireplace with his hands clasped behind his back. 4 hours every weekday evening. 2 full weekends a month. Pick up the kids, supervise homework, make dinner, wait until my brother-in-law got home around 7. And if I said no, well, then my $800 rent would suddenly become market rate. They called it helping family. I called it blackmail. The crazy part? I actually sat there for a minute, considering it. Because that's what I'd been trained to do my entire life: adjust, compromise, absorb. Make myself smaller so everyone else could be comfortable. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the way my mom didn't even blink when she threatened me. Maybe it was how my sister Lauren sat there twisting her wedding ring, not even looking at me. Or maybe it was just that I'd finally had enough. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and said I needed time to think. My dad shook his head. "We need an answer today." "You'll have it," I told him. I walked out that door knowing exactly what I was going to do. And it wasn't what they expected. Let me back up a bit, because you need to understand how I ended up here in the first place. 6 years ago, I moved into a small apartment my parents owned in the suburbs of Connecticut. It made sense at the time: affordable rent, close to my job, a quiet space of my own. I was 24, just starting to figure out my career as a financial analyst. $800 a month felt like a gift, and I was grateful. I made that place mine. Found a reading chair at an estate sale and put it by the window. Saved up for a soft rug that made the hardwood floors feel warmer. Hung an antique mirror I found at a weekend market. It wasn't much, but every piece meant something. Every choice was mine. Or so I thought. Growing up, my family looked perfect from the outside. Holiday photos lined up in the hallway. Matching sweaters at Christmas. My mom always insisted tradition mattered more than convenience. But underneath all that staged perfection was a hierarchy nobody talked about. Lauren was the sun. Everyone else just orbited around her. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate my sister. She wasn't cruel or manipulative. She was just fragile, somehow. The one who always needed more support, more attention, more understanding. When she married Kyle and had 3 kids, Lucy, Finn, and baby Mia, the entire family rearranged itself around her life. And me? I was the capable one. The one who adjusted when things got uncomfortable. The one who swallowed boundaries and called it peace. I remember being 14 when I first realized how this worked. Lauren was supposed to help me study for my math final, but she canceled last minute because she had a date. My mom told me not to make a fuss about it. "Your sister needs this right now," she said. "You're good at math anyway. You'll figure it out." I did figure it out. I always did. And every time I figured something out on my own, it just proved I didn't need help. Which meant the next time, I got even less. If Lauren needed help, I gave it. If my parents needed a favor, I rearranged my schedule. It was easier than dealing with the guilt trips or the disappointed silences. But here's the thing about swallowing too much for too long: eventually something catches in your throat. The weeks before that family meeting, I'd noticed my mom's messages getting more urgent. Little comments about family responsibility dropped into casual conversations. Lauren sounded exhausted every time we talked, her voice stretched thin as she complained about sleepless nights and Kyle's constant work trips. Still, I didn't see it coming. I'd finally gotten to a good place in my life. My job was stable after years of long hours and difficult clients. I wasn't wealthy, but I was independent. On track. And that mattered to me more than anything. So when the email came, subject line family meeting, mandatory, I rolled my eyes and assumed it was another one of my mom's dramatic gatherings. Like the time we spent 45 minutes debating kitchen cabinet colors. I had no idea they were about to leverage everything I'd built against me. The moment I walked into that living room, I knew something was wrong. My dad was pacing by the fireplace, doing that hands behind his back thing he did when delivering bad news. My mom sat on the edge of the couch, spine straight, ankles crossed, lips pressed tight. And Lauren was in the armchair, twisting that wedding ring. "You're late," my mom said the second I walked in. I glanced at my phone. It's 11:58. The meeting was at noon. She waved that off like time bent to her expectations. "Sit," my dad said, gesturing to the love seat. "We need to talk." The silence in that room made my skin prickle. I sat down, purse beside me, waiting. Lauren wouldn't look at me. That was the first real warning sign. My mom took a sharp breath. "Your sister needs help." "I'm drowning, Leah," Lauren whispered. "Kyle's gone so much. The kids, it's just too much." I nodded slowly. "Okay. What kind of help are we talking about?" That's when my dad stepped in with that calm, reasonable voice that always meant he'd already made up his mind. "As a family, we support each other. Your mother and I think the best solution is for you to take on more responsibility with your nieces and nephew." "Responsibility?" I repeated. My mom pulled out a folded piece of paper from the coffee table. She'd actually prepared a schedule. Typed it up. Probably spent an hour making sure the fonts looked professional. "Just until things calmed down," she said, then started reading it like a contract. "Pick up Lucy at 3:15. Pick up Finn at 3:30. Bring them home. Supervise homework. Prepare dinner. Stay until Kyle gets back around 7. Plus 2 full weekends every month." My mouth went dry. "You're asking me to babysit every single day?" "We prefer the term helping family," my dad said, his voice getting harder. "I work until 6 most days," I said. "Sometimes later. You can adjust," he replied. Simple as that. Your job shouldn't come before family. There it was. The dismissal of everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed. 6 years of climbing through difficult clients and endless reports, finally getting promoted to senior analyst just 3 months ago, none of it mattered. "And if I don't adjust?" I asked quietly. My parents exchanged a look. The kind of look that said they'd rehearsed this. My mom folded her hands in her lap. "Then we'll need to reconsider your current rent. $800 is far below market value. If you refuse to help, we'll raise it to a fair price." My stomach dropped. "Are you threatening to raise my rent unless I become Lauren's unpaid nanny?" My mom didn't even blink. "We're asking you to contribute. If you won't, then yes, your rent will reflect market rate." Lauren finally looked up, eyes pleading. "I really need you, Leah." And that's when something inside me snapped. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet, like a thread pulled too tight for too long finally breaking. I stood up. "I need time to think. We need an answer today," my father said. "You'll have it." I walked out. The second I got back to my apartment, I closed the door and just stood there, letting the silence wash over me. My parents' voices still echoed in my head, calm, certain, entitled. Like they'd already decided my life for me. For a few minutes, I just stared at my living room. The soft rug. The reading chair by the window. The mirror catching the afternoon light. All the little things I'd chosen carefully, believing they belonged to me. Now I knew the truth. They were leverage. Not stability. Not support. Leverage. That realization burned. I sat at my desk and pulled out my lease. I'd signed it years ago without thinking much about it, trusting my parents wouldn't weaponize it. But as I read through every line, my heartbeat shifted from panic to something slower. Colder. They couldn't raise the rent immediately. They couldn't raise it more than 10% per year. And they were legally required to give 90 days written notice. Every threat they'd made in that living room was a bluff. The anger that hit me wasn't explosive. It was clarifying. Sharp. Controlled. The kind of emotion that makes everything suddenly make sense. I opened my laptop and started searching for apartments. Within hours, a real estate agent sent me listings in my budget. By the next morning, I'd taken 3 vacation days from work and scheduled tours. On Tuesday, I saw a place that was nice but felt wrong. Too close to my parents' neighborhood. On Wednesday morning, I toured another apartment that smelled like cigarette smoke and desperation. But Wednesday afternoon, I found it. A renovated industrial-style apartment 20 minutes away. Exposed brick. Tall windows that let in actual sunlight. A space that felt honest and untouched by expectations. The landlord was an older woman named Margaret who asked me straightforward questions and didn't pry into my personal life. I applied on the spot. By Thursday morning, I was approved. I didn't tell anyone. Not a single word. Thursday night, I started packing. I worked deliberately, room by room, folding clothes in silence, wrapping dishes in paper, labeling boxes with calm handwriting. The apartment slowly transformed into a half-empty shell. The more I packed, the more I felt like I was reclaiming something I hadn't realized I'd lost. I found things I'd forgotten about. A journal from 2 years ago where I'd written about feeling stuck. A birthday card from Lauren that said you're the best sister anyone could ask for right next to a list of favors she needed. Photos from family dinners where I was always standing slightly apart from everyone else. On Friday, I drafted my 60-day notice exactly as the lease required. No emotion. No explanation. Just facts. I printed it, signed it, slid it into an envelope, and sent it by certified mail. By Saturday morning, movers arrived right on time. Rain pattered softly against the windows as they carried out my furniture, my books, my carefully chosen pieces. I walked through the apartment one final time, cleaning the counters, smoothing the wrinkles from the bedspread, making sure everything was spotless. If my parents wanted to weaponize this space, they wouldn't get a single excuse. When the last box was loaded, I placed the keys on the counter, stepped outside, locked the door, and slid them through the mail slot. By the time my parents realized what was happening, I was already gone. My phone lit up before I even finished unpacking my first box. 10 missed calls. Then 16. Then 23. The voicemail icons stacked up like warning signs. I didn't press play. I didn't need to hear my mom's clipped panic or my dad's anger disguised as authority to know what they'd say. They'd gone to the apartment, found it empty, and now they were spiraling. By Sunday afternoon, I'd blocked their numbers. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful, not yet, but it was mine. On Tuesday morning, a certified letter arrived at my office. They'd tracked down my workplace. My chest tightened as I opened it, half expecting threats, half expecting guilt. It was both. A demand that I return home immediately to discuss the family situation, followed by vague threats about necessary legal steps if I didn't respond. I took the letter straight to Stephen Morrison's office. He was a lawyer a friend had recommended months ago for something unrelated, and I'd kept his card. He read it once, sighed, then read it again more slowly, the way lawyers do when something is both ridiculous and predictable. They don't have a case, he said. I figured. But they're escalating, so we need to respond. His letter went out 2 days later. Perfectly measured. All communication must go through him. Any attempt to harass or retaliate would be documented. No legal claims had standing. And just like that, the calls stopped. The silence this time felt different. Not mine. Theirs. But chaos has a way of seeping through cracks. A week and a half later, my Aunt Caroline called. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. They're losing it, she said before I could even speak. Your mother is furious. Your father is. I don't know. Embarrassed. Confused. Both. I didn't say anything. I didn't owe her a defense. They hired a nanny, she added quietly. It's costing them real money. Like $1,500 a month. And they're helping Lauren cover most of it because Kyle's salary isn't enough. There it was. The consequence. The real cost of what they tried to get for free. Good, I said. Someone should actually get paid for that work. Caroline was quiet for a moment. You know, your mother keeps saying you overreacted. Of course she does. But between you and me, I think she knows she messed up. She just can't admit it. 2 weeks later, Stephen called me into his office. Your parents have requested a mediation session. It appears they've also retained counsel. Of course they had. My parents were the type who hated losing more than they valued being right. I could have refused. But part of me wanted everything on record. I wanted the truth laid bare, not just in my memory, but in a room where no one could rewrite it later. The mediation was scheduled for a cold November morning at a business center downtown. I arrived early, dressed in a dark navy suit, hair pulled back, hands steady. Stephen walked beside me with the calm confidence of someone who'd handled far uglier family disputes. Inside, my parents sat at one side of a long table. Their lawyer, Margaret Carlson, beside them. My mom's face was pale. My dad's jaw was tight. Neither looked at me. The mediator, an older man named Walter Harrison, cleared his throat and explained the rules. No interruptions. Respectful language. Everyone would have time to speak. My father jumped in first. We're here because our family has been fractured over a misunderstanding. A laugh rose in my throat, sharp and humorless, but I swallowed it. My mom tried to soften her tone. We simply asked Leah to support her sister during a difficult time. We didn't expect her to flee. Flee? I repeated. I followed the legal terms of my lease and moved to a new apartment. We offered affordable housing, my father snapped. And in return? I cut in. You threatened to raise my rent unless I became my sister's unpaid nanny. Margaret shifted forward. My clients regret how that conversation came across. No, I said. Let's not rewrite it. They said the words. Raise your rent unless you help. They said it calmly, proudly, as if it were reasonable. My mother's shoulders tensed. We were trying to help Lauren. And you decided my life, my time, my job were all negotiable so hers wouldn't be. You weaponized rent. You used the apartment I cared for and paid for as leverage. You didn't ask me to help. You told me I owed it. Silence spread across the room, thick and uncomfortable. Even Margaret seemed unsure how to proceed. Stephen leaned forward. My client is willing to maintain a relationship, but only if boundaries are respected. No financial threats. No childcare obligations. No interference with her housing or career. My father's face reddened. So that's it? You expect us to accept these demands? I held his gaze. I expect you to accept that I'm an adult. And that coercion is not family. My mother's eyes filled with anger and wounded pride. We just wanted you home. This wasn't about home, I said quietly. This was about control. Walter interjected gently. Let's focus on a possible resolution. It took another 30 minutes of back and forth, my parents shifting between defensiveness, justification, and reluctant acknowledgement. But eventually, they agreed. They would respect boundaries. They would stop using financial leverage. They would not pressure me into childcare. And any future issues would be approached with consent, not expectation. Margaret drafted a short memorandum. We all signed it. It wasn't legally binding, but it was a record. A line drawn in ink. As we gathered our things, my mom finally looked at me. Really looked. Her voice cracked. I didn't realize you felt trapped. You didn't need to realize, I said. I told you for years in 100 different ways. You just never listened. My father spoke last. So what happens now? I took a slow breath. Now you deal with the chaos you created. And I live my life. Stephen placed a hand on my arm, guiding me toward the door. The hallway outside was quiet, but my heartbeat steadied with every step. This wasn't victory. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely, undeniably free. The first morning in my new apartment felt almost unreal. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, warming the exposed brick, catching on the steam rising from my coffee. My shoulders weren't tense. No one was waiting for me to fix their life. No one was timing when I walked through the door. The quiet didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt earned. Work fell back into rhythm. Without the constant emotional tug-of-war, my focus sharpened. My manager even commented that I looked lighter, which made me laugh because I finally understood what it meant to not carry someone else's expectations. I started saying yes to things I'd always turned down before. Happy hours with coworkers. A weekend trip to Boston with friends. Small things that felt huge because they were mine to choose. Meanwhile, the consequences of my family's ultimatum settled exactly where they belonged. Lauren hired a full-time nanny, someone qualified, someone fairly paid. My parents helped cover the cost, which according to Aunt Caroline became a monthly reminder of the moment they'd pushed too far. I didn't gloat. Not even privately. But there was a certain poetic symmetry in watching them absorb the responsibility they'd tried to dump on me. When I eventually met Lauren for coffee, the conversation felt human again. No manipulation. No desperation. Just two sisters trying to rebuild something honest. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. I knew what they were doing was wrong. I was so tired. "I get it," I said. "But being tired doesn't mean you get to use people." She nodded. "The nanny is great, by the way. Professional. The kids actually listened to her. I didn't volunteer to babysit. She didn't ask." And that alone showed how much had changed. Dinner with my parents came weeks later at a neutral restaurant. It was awkward at first, but civil. Careful. Almost fragile. They asked about my new place, my work, my routine. I answered with the confidence of someone who finally understood her own worth. Our relationship wasn't healed. Not fully. Maybe never. But it was no longer built on obligation. And that was enough. Looking back, disappearing wasn't an act of rebellion. It was an act of survival. Setting boundaries didn't destroy my family, it revealed what was already broken and what could finally be rebuilt. I learned that love without respect is just control dressed up as tradition. And no one deserves to live under that weight. If you've ever felt cornered by the people who were supposed to protect you, know this: choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, share it with others who need to hear it, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself when the world expects you to stay small. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who treat your boundaries like suggestions.